Hi, my name is Winslet, and welcome to my Psynumbra Doctrine tier list. At the beginning of April, I posted my complete Doctrine tier list, which looks like this. And today, I'm going to be going over why I placed each of the Psynumbra Doctrines where I did. While I expect that future expansions and patches will change how good some of these doctrines are and add a few others, the doctrines kept the values that they had when the game first launched up until the Tyrannosaurus patch, so for about 9 months, and I expect that these numbers will stay the same for a while now. Even if they do change, I think that these tier lists will remain useful, especially to new players who just want to get a general idea as to what is a good doctrine to take when and why I like them. There are 97 doctrines that I could find in the game, and while I'd love to talk about them all in one video, I decided to break them into smaller, more digestible segments like this one. The first doctrine we're going to talk about here is Initiation Rites, which is in the A tier because it's quite a powerful one if you unlock it early enough and invest in it enough, which shouldn't be too hard to do given that it's only a tier 3 tech. It shouldn't take you too long to unlock it and start getting as much out of it as possible. Now you may be wondering, what does it actually give you? To look at the numbers, we can hop on over to the game like this and search it in the Imperial Archives up here. So it will make it so that your newly recruited Psynumbra units start with a rank of experience, and when they die, they will spawn in an Echo of Despair upon death that will last until the end of combat. I think if you are going to be playing the Psynumbra secret tech, you should have a decent amount of Psynumbra units on the field. I love the Matlictors, and getting a little bit more experience on them will keep them on the map a little bit longer, give them more HP, allowing them to just have more, staying alive power in a battle. But I think the really big selling point on this doctrine is the fact that when they die, they bring in an Echo of Despair, which means that you'll have another unit on your side of the fight after you lose a Psynumbra one, at least for a little bit longer. The Echoes of Despair aren't very strong, but they're very good throwaway units to keep the enemy busy. You can kite like half of a force off with a Echo of Despair if you're lucky, and then only take on the other half with the rest of your army, just to make it so that you can manage the enemy a little tiny bit more. But you do have to be prepared to lose some of your own units if you're trying to get the most out of this doctrine as you possibly can. Now, before we move on to the next one in our list, I want to pull up the complete tier list and see what we have next to it. We have, I think that's Hearts and Minds off to the left, and then we actually have the next doctrine I want to talk about right next to this one. We're going to be talking about torture regimes soon, but let's just pull up Hearts and Minds in game really quickly to compare it to the thing we were just talking about. So Hearts and Minds will make it so that you get more experience from questing, not experience, influence from questing, which means that you'll be able to buy more units or mods from the NPC factions that you're doing the quests for, and on top of that, it'll make it easier to absorb colonies, so you can be more of a nice guy when you're conquering other people. You don't have to raise their settlements to, take them off the map and make it so that the enemy can't use them. If you have if it's 3 turns faster to absorb all colonies, then it will be just as fast as migrating, or maybe even faster. So I love this one. I think it's a very nice doctrine. Of course, you do have to be doing quests or playing relatively nice to get anything out of it, but I think that the Vanguard can do that pretty easily, pretty well. Now let's compare this Initiation Rites to torture regimes, regimes, however you say it, is to the right of Initiation Rites, and that means it's slightly worse in my opinion. This will give you +1 resistances to all damage. All of your units will get a little bit more resistance to all damage, and they'll make it so that their psionic attacks deal an extra 20% damage, which is incredible. I think it's very easy to argue that this doctrine is better than initiation rites. It's going to be something that you have to invest a lot of research in to unlock. It's pretty high up there in accessibility, but I think the value that it gives you is definitely worthwhile, and something that I would consider spending 200 energy on, using one of my doctrine slots on. And yeah, I think the fact that you get that extra resistance to all damage types on top of the +20% extra damage is really, really nice, because unlike a lot of the extra damage things that we have at the bottom of our tier list, this doesn't really have a condition against the enemy. The enemy doesn't have to be a certain type for you to get the extra damage. All you have to be doing is using your psychic attacks, which is like all the Psynumbra do. They focus on psionic attacks, so yeah, it's very, very valuable. Now, what I would like to do next is I would like to compare this to the next doctrine in our list, which is a synthesis one. I think that one is the Total War something or other. Let's see if we can find it in our Imperial Archives. Total War, yeah, found it. So this makes it so that all of your units gain an extra rank when produced. That's similar to initiation rites, and they cost 20% less. So it's definitely not as good as initiation rites, but getting everybody to have that extra bit of XP is super, super good, especially when combined with the research exploitation that gives you extra experience, and then making things cheaper is nice. I mean, you'll have to get more than 200 energy out of that to make it really worthwhile. But I think if you get this early enough, that shouldn't be too hard to do, and is probably worth the investment, just to get that experience on your units. Experience is really, really, really valuable and easy to overlook, because the first rank doesn't give your tier 1 units too much, but like that 3rd rank or 4th rank on a tier 4 unit is a big difference. It's a massive difference. Alright, so let's go see what we have next on our Psynumbra tier list, which is Sinister Chant. So I don't know that one off the top of my head. We're going to have to go pull that up in game to see what Sinister Chant does. Sinister Chant. So Sinister Chant says that enemy units within our domain will suffer negative morale and -2 psi resistance, which is very valuable if the enemies get into your domain. But if they're in your domain, that might be a little too late. You may not be able to take on their forces. It's only really, really useful if you're baiting them forward into a fight, that you can take advantage of that negative morale malices and all the other nice stats effects that Psynumbra can apply. I mean, that they did change in the Tyrannosaurus patch how negative morale actually impacts people, and now it's a lot easier to get benefits out of causing negative morale in the enemy, and it pairs really, really nicely with how the Psynumbra play. I mean, they're all psychic damage, so that -2 resistance is massive and will allow them to do a lot more damage. But I think there's something out there where it's like the lower morale an enemy has, the more damage you do against them. That may be a doctrine that we're about to look at, or an operation. I do remember something about that, where you want to lower the enemy's morale to get as much out of it. Now, it is a lot of energy to invest, 200 energy to get those effects, so, you know, I wouldn't use this as often as the other doctrines that we've talked about, but there are situations where it becomes just as competitive as the other ones that we have talked about. Now, let's pull up our complete tier list to see what we have next to it. I see it. It's near the end of our B tier, and it is right after an Empire quest and right before a landmark one, which I will have to look up in my notes to see the name of. I think that's Unifier there. Let's go see if we can find Unifier before I go look for that special landmark thing. So, Unifier, not the yellow one, but the blue one. This will make it so that all of our units gain extra morale, and we have 200 more reputation, which can get us to virtuous, which is very nice. If you're at virtuous, then I think it can be free to get certain settlements inside of your space. You don't have to pay influence, which is so cool. But the morale, I think, is the real selling point on this thing. Being able to get more critical hits and also offset any negative malices that enemies are putting on you is something you don't want to forget. Just keeping yourself at neutral against things like Psynumbra will really help out. And I think that's why this one is, you know, slightly ahead of, what was it called? I've forgotten. The indoctrination thingies? No. We looked it up a second ago. If I do this, does it pull up? Sinister Chants. There we go. It's slightly better than our Sinister Chant. So, next one is our Landmark Doctrine. I've got them off separate, so this shouldn't take me more than like 5 seconds once I scroll down to it. There we go, I found it. It's the Elysium Camp followers. So, let's go pull up that in game. You want the camp people. So yeah, this says that all non-mindless units gain 400 morale, which means basically people who can be affected by morale, I think, get a little bit of extra morale. Biological and cyborg units also gain a tiny bit more HP, which honestly is nothing compared to that morale boost. That morale boost it's very similar to the Unifier Doctrine we were just looking at. It will allow you to get more crits, and it will also allow you to avoid fumbles if somebody's trying to like drop your morale down. So yeah, I think it's pretty good. Slightly worse than Sinister Chants, but arguably better. I know that some people will be saying, why isn't this better than Unifier? Well, you have to clear out a landmark to get this, and fulfilling that condition is going to be rare. It's going to be hard to actually get this. I think the other one's just a little bit easier to apply, and while I don't want to really consider the accessibility a big factor when comparing things within the tech tree, this thing is just so unlikely to unlock that I think it makes sense to put it further down on the list. Now, I think we're ready to move on to our last doctrine in our Psynumbra Doctrine tier list. So we have Sadistic Indoctrination. Let's go pull that one up and see what that one is listed as. Nope, I need to pull up the game so you can see that on my recording stuff. So yeah, it was Sadistic. Yes, this is actually what I was talking about earlier. So you do have to combine this with, I think it was the last one where it was inflicting negative morale to get the most out of both of the doctrines, but together they become very nice, very strong. So yeah, this one right here, it says that your non-mindless units now gain sadism, allowing them to do 25 extra % damage to units with low morale. So you just gotta apply Broken Mind or maybe that other thing to lower their morale enough to get the plus 25% extra damage. I did put the swords on there because you do have to fulfill a condition. You do have to be facing things that can have the morale lowered, but that is a majority of enemy types. There's very few things that are mindless and cannot be affected by morale. So I can see you arguing that this is better than a lot of the other doctrines with the swords, but I don't know. You have to combine it with the fact that you're going to be lowering morale, and that's synergy right there. So I would say that you have to invest synergy for this to become better, and by itself it's like it's kind of pretty meh actually. But yeah, it's not hard to invest in it to get to do lots of good stuff. Alright, so what do we have around it on my complete doctrine tier list? It looks like we have, I think that's Deep Infiltration and Quantum Project on the other side. So let's just pull those ones up quickly. So yeah, this gives you plus 25% against things with low morale. Deep Infiltration is pretty similar. If you infiltrate another player, then you can get plus 20% bonus damage against their units. That doesn't have to be against non-mindless or things with low morale, but you do have to infiltrate the player, and I think that really puts them on the same level. I think infiltrating a player can be applied more universally than applying negative morale, so this is slightly better, just slightly better, but it does give less percent damage boost. It's 20% versus the 25, so yeah, you could make the argument that the other one we were just looking at, Sadistic Indoctrinations, is better than Deep Infiltration, but in my mind I think Deep Infiltration is just slightly better. And yeah, let's pull up quantum thingies now. Yeah, the Quantum Project, it will give you plus 15 energy for each colony, in each colony for every research sector linked to it. There's a lot of things like this that come after the damage boosts. There's a lot of things that give a little boost to your research income, and I think there is value here. It's just you get more value out of the doctrines that affect your combat ability than the ones that impact your economy, and specifically your research economy. Ever since they added the ability to get research from anomalies, things like this became a lot worse. And I think that's everything I wanted to talk about on this tier list. Yeah, that's the last doctrine on this tier list. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and to subscribe. I'll see you around.